Okay, sagt der Heilige Mishnah. Dam is arv b'mayim. Blood that got mixed in water. Im yesh boy maris dam. If it still looks like dam, there's still a red tinge there. Kosher, the dam could still be spritzed onto his bed. But what about if it was this arv b'ayim? Sagt the Mishnah, roi noisoi, ki ilu humayim. You look at the wine as if it was water, and you make an assessment. Had that much water being diluted into the dam, would it still look like dam? What about nis'ar b'dam behema or b'dam achaya? The dam of the carbon got mixed into the dam of the behema of chulin or achaya, which surely is chulin. Roin oizaki iluhumayim. Once again, you look at the foreign blood as if it's water, and then you make the assessment as to whether or not it would have had still a tinge of dam. Okay, let's go on to Ayin Ches, which is today's daf. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ein dam mevatel dam. You don't have to make any assessments. With one dam gets mixed into another dam. Why? Because dam will never be mevatel dam. Nis'ar b'dam psulim. But what if dam of a pasula got mixed into the dam of a carbon? And Rashi gives us several examples of what dam psulim is. And Rashi says either it means the blood of a rave of a nirva, or the blood of an animal that was piglet. So then you have to spill it all out. And Rashi tells us, of course, that this is a gzera, because if you hold ein dam mevatel dam, or you hold that you roino shekilu mayim, there is still kosher blood here. Why we have to spill it out? The Gemara is going to explain. B'dam atamzis yishafech la'amo. The same thing would apply if the dam that's royal is rika, the dam nefesh got mixed in with dam atamzis. Rabbi Eliezer Machshir. Rabbi Eliezer goes, this is not a problem. Now, what happens in Loindilbach? What if the Kohen didn't ask a Shaila? He took the mixture of these bloods, with psulim, the nazan, and he made drika with it. Kosher, the carbon will be kosher, because technically the carbon had a drika done properly. Zok tehilvim, Amar Kibar Abba Amar Bech. Loi Shanu, this that we're learning, Zok Rashi, maris dam kosher, that if there's still a tinge of red in it, when dam got mixed with water, that we say it's kosher. The af al gav the ruba mayim, even though it's roiv mayim. So you would think that the roiv, you go bust roiv, and it's considered water, but no, if there's still a tinge of red, we will still say it's dam. That's only el shenaflu mayim l'sech dam. That's only if water fell into dam. But if dam fell into water, it sort of dripped in, rishon bottle. The first drip that dripped into the water definitely didn't make a rishon on the water. The water, you wouldn't even be able to tell that was blood mixed into it. So that became bottle and now became part of the water. And as you add each individual drip, it doesn't change anything, because all that blood that fell into the water would have been disqualified from Zrika. However, Umar Papa, that only applies to Mina carbon, because once the dam is dachui, it's disqualified from Zrika, even if you add enough drops that eventually, now there is a Mara dam in the water, it's too late, because the dam that was dripping into that water prior to the final drop was disqualified already. However, in Kisui, what about the mitzvah of Kisui Adam, where there was a drop of the dam of the bird or chaya that you had to make Kisui on, dripped into a container of water, and little by little it dripped in until there was a maradam. There you would have a chiyuv to do the mitzvah of Kisui Adam, and therefore it's not like by kachim. When it comes to mitzvahs, there's no such thing as dichri. If at the beginning, when only a couple of drops of dam fell into the water, you weren't yet eligible to do Kisui Adam, but as soon as you are eligible, because the concentration of blood goes up, Avada, the mitzvah of Kisui Adam, will remain. Let's see Rashi. Lefi she'ein dichri b'mitzvahs. The aval p shenitcha tipa rishayda shenafal sechamayim v'lehayim arisa nikar. Even though the first drops that fell into this water became bottled from being dam, they became like water. Afilu hachi ki hadar nafal tipa shnia, when we finally add enough drops of dam so that now the dam is nicker in the water. Chayzeres rishayna v'ni'ura, the first drops that we said were bottled in the water come back to life. They wake up and they join the blood. It's starfima. They be starved with the blood. And therefore, if it fell in drip by drip until the point where you were able to see the reddish tinge in the water, and now it is a maradam, now once again it reawakens and it's able to be mekayim the mitzvah of kisu adam. You don't say this concept that once this dam could no longer fulfill the mitzvah of kisui, it doesn't come back. The whole concept of dichui applies to kachim, not to regular mitzvahs. Zok the Gemara, Amar Shlokish. Hapigol v'noisher b'tamid shebodol on zebozeh. There are those who take out the word tamid. So you had pigol and noiser that were mixed together. You had a kazayis of pigol and you had a kazayis of noiser that were mixed together. V'ochlam, and you ate them. You put two kazayis into your mouth in one shot. Potter, you'll be potter. Why are you potter? You had a kazayis of pigol and you had a kazayis of noiser. There's a big machlokas rishonim how to understand this Gemara, but we'll go with the pashas of Rashi. So the Gemara, while you have the kezais of pigel and the kezais of noiser. Now let's frame it. If it's a piece of meat, they don't really get so mixed. So it's easier to understand this if we're talking about pigel and noiser. If I'm carbon mincha, so all you do is you have two kezais of mincha. Of dough, of some type of mixture of flour and water. While you're chewing, no one's going to assume that the kazayis of pigel will stay contained on one side of your mouth, and the kazayis of noisher will stay contained on the other side of your mouth. It's inevitable that there's going to be some pieces and flour that's going to mix. So at any point, while you're chewing, it might very well be that some of the pigel went into the noiser and became bottled to the noiser because it was a miut. And now, although you do have a kazayis of noiser, but you don't have a kazayis of pigel. So you might have a kazayis of pigel or of noiser, but you might not have of both. So therefore, you're going to be put. Why? Because he efsher shaloyarba min al chaveira v'yivatlen. It's impossible that some content of the pigel won't get mixed in the kezais of noiser. That little bit of pigel that got mixed into noiser will be bottled in the noiser, but in the meantime, you no longer have a kezais of pigel. Shemamina, from a shlogish psak. You see three halachas, because only with these three halachas would this psak make sense. A, shelo yarba shemamina. Isur mevatlan zesa. Pigel is an isur. Noiser is an isur. We know that isur is bottle and heter. But who said that one isur would be bottled in another isur? The chiddush is here that one isur would be bottled in another isur. Ushmamina, you also learn from here that nois and tam beroy v'lav d'oraisa. At the end of the day, even if only a little bit of noiser mixed into the pigel, but there'll be a taste of the noiser in the pigel, because it's not, the taste isn't bottled until it's eches b'shishim. Here you have a little bit mixed into a kazayis, you don't have shishim. So there's a svar of tam keker. It must be the tam keker's lav d'oraisa, because otherwise you should surely have a chiyuv malchus, aside for the tam of pigel, and aside for the tam of noiser. It must be tam keker's lav d'oraisa. And the third halacha that must be is Shmamina Hasra Sopik Lo Shemasor. Why don't you get Malchus? You for sure ate one Isser, either out of Kazais of Pickle or you had a Kazais of Noiser. So what's the problem? The Teretz is Hasra Sopik Lo Shemasor. Before you can get Malchus, Adam have to warn the person who's being over there, the person who's eating this mixture, don't eat this because it's pickle, and you'll get Malchus if you eat pickle. But they don't know if it's pickle. Maybe the pickle was bottled. Or they might say, don't eat it because it's nicer, and you'll get Malchus if you eat nicer. Once again, they don't know if it's nicer. So therefore, it's a Hasra Suffolk, and Hasra Suffolk is Loish Masra. Gewaltig. Most of Rava. Rava is going to ask a kasha on the three halachas that the Gemara says is proven that that's the Shita versus Lakish. Because it says as follows: Also Isa min chitin umin oiris. We know what type of dough do you separate challah from? Only from the 5 grains, but not from rice. So what if you made a dough that was a blend? It had wheat content in it, and it had rice content in it. The halacha is even if it's roiv oires, roiv of the dough that you have here is not the content of grain, but yesh tam dagon chayeves b'chalal. V'afagav deruba oires. So doesn't this indicate that tam is kicker? You were telling us that tam kicker is lav deraisa. But if merely the tam of chitin in the dough is enough to trigger a chi of challah, wouldn't that prove that tam kicker is deraisa? Zok to Gemara, no. Maybe it's midrabanan. Maybe the chi of challah is midrabanan. There's a chi to be mafresh challah, but we don't know that there's a deraisa chi. So maybe we can still maintain that tam kicker is not deraisa. Zok to Gemara, okay. But we have another case that surely proves that tam kicker is deraisa. Ihachi ema seifa adam yoytze ba yidei chavasid bepasach. If you ate a matzah made out of this type of dough, it would be mekayim the mitzvah of chilas matzah. Now, surely we all agree that you could only be yoytze the mitzvah matzah from a min that makes chometz. The Torah says le'seichel chometz shiva matzah techelu. So we learn that matzah can only be made out of a grain that could become chametz, not out of oires. So from the fact that you have roiv oires and a miyat of chitin, and the mere fact that it tastes like chitin is enough that you're mekayim a mitzvah deraisa of achilas matzah, must indicate that tam kicker is deraisa. So I have a right tam kicker is deraisa from this brisa. How could you claim that Rish Lakish holds that tam kicker is not midaraisa? And for the Gemara, going on to Daf Ayin Chesam and base. Ella min b'she'ena minoi b'taima. We're going to have to pull back, and we're going to have to say that when one min gets mixed into another min, where there's not only a roy factor, but there's also a taste factor, we do say b'taima. And meaning until it's bottled b'shishim and there's no remnant of the flavor of the iser, tam kiker's the rice. But if it was min b'minoi, what if two minim that are the same min got mixed together? So the taste is the same. There you'll say beruba. So we're saying a massive chiddush. Min b'shein minoi is much more chomer because it's not enough to have a roiv of heter to be mevatel the iser. You also need enough heter that there's no taste of the iser there at all. Mashenga by min b'minoi, you'll need a simple roiv. Once you have a simple roiv, we're not concerned about taste because it's min b'minoi. And maybe that's Pshat Rish Lakish. And maybe Rish Lakish was speaking in a case of only min b'minoi. Rish Lakish was talking about, like what I said originally, that two kizais and a mincha are mixed together. They both have a mincha, they both taste the same. But if there are two different types of isurim, maybe you would need shishim. Elamin b'sheini mina b'taima min b'mina is peruba. Fragt the Gemara, Unishayr min b'minoi, kemin b'she'ene minoi. Just because it's min b'minoi, you don't make believe that it was a different min and say you also have to be mevatel the top, right? Similar to our Mishnah. That's not we learned. This Arab yayin, if dam mix into yayin, which from a Mara perspective, it's min b'minoi, because they're both red. What does our Mishnah say? Roy noisa kilu humayim b'mayim. Roy noisa kilu humayim. What does it mean, Roy noisa kilu humayim? My love, Roy noisa liyayin kilu humayim. You look at the wine that got mixed into the dam as if it was water, and had it been water, would there still be a mira of dam visible in the water, and then it still has a status of dam? So why don't you say the same thing when it comes to taste by min b'minoi, even though they taste the same, so you can't tell if the tam of one is bottle or not, but look at the mixed in iser, the mixed in foreign object, as if it was a different min, and see how much you would need, which would be shishim. So why should you be mekel? Why shouldn't you also require shishim by min b'minoi? Zog to Gemara, that's not pshat in the Mishnah. You know what pshat in the Mishnah is? Roin oisoi ledam ki ilu humayim. What it says is, if wine got mixed into water, if wine got mixed into dam, and there's a roiv of yayin, even a drop more, you look at the dam like it's water. In other words, vibalta was min b'minoi in mara, a mere roiv, a simple roiv will be mevatel the dam. So Reinois Ladam Kilu Mayim is not like we thought until now. The pshat is you use it as part of your assessment and you look at it as if it was water, and based on that you figure it out. No. Reinois Ladam Kilu Mayim means once there's a rive of yayin, once there's a rive of yayin, the dam is bottled. And the dam is no longer dam. It's as if the dam is water. And therefore it's possible with a mere rive. So that would be consistent with how we want to say in your shlokish that min b'mino is bottled with a simple rive. Frag the Gemara, if that's what the Mishnah meant, that when there's a rive of yayin in dam, even though it's just a drop more, and there's not enough to be mevatel the myra, but the fact that it's a simple rive of min b'minoi, of yayin in dam, it's mevatel the dam and it makes it like it's water, that's not how the Mishnah should have expressed this halacha. The Mishnah should have been much more clear. You know what the Mishnah should have said? If there's more yayin than mayim, even a drop more, the dam. If there's more yayin than dam, if there's more yayin than dam in this mixture, even a drop more yayin than there is dam, bottle. The dam is bottle. Why say roy noisel yayin, which is confusing? It could be interpreted in different ways. The Mishnah should have just said bottle. The dam is bottle because it's overwhelmed by the roy yayin. Bottle and boiling. That's problem number one with your assertion. But there's another problem, because Rabbi Yehuda contradicts this. Rabbi Yehuda Royin Oisai Iluhu Yain Edon. Rabbi Yehuda is talking about a completely different halacha. And we're going to show you how Rabbi Yehuda holds that even when you have a min b'minoi in Mara, you always look at it like it's min b'sheni minoi, and you have to have a lot more in order to totally mevatel the Isser. What was the case of Rabbi Yehuda? The case was as follows: the Tanya, Deli sheyesh boy yayin lavan oichalav. There's a deli. It's like a keli that's used to lower into a bar, into a well to draw water, and it was tamei. Now you want to toivel it in the bar to be matired. The problem is it has in its base kibble, it has either white wine or milk, which pretty much looks like water. So if you toivel it, we don't know if there's water in there, and therefore your keli became tahar, or if it's wine. So the Tanakhama says, as long as there's a roiv of water there, it will be sufficient to say this keli becomes tar. It was toivel in the water. But Rabbi Yehuda says, the white liquid that's easily confused when you mix it into water, you have to look at that white liquid like it's red, like it's yain edai. And then I can tell you if the tevilah would be good. Kosher, if when you dipped it into the water, that red got completely lightened up and neutralized, then we'll say there's enough water in the base kibble of the dli to say that it was tovel in water, puzzle. So you see clearly from Rabbi Yehuda this concept. You see clearly from Rabbi Yehuda this concept that you do say it's royin oisoi. You never say that with a min b'minoi did be middle b'roy. You always lead to look at it like it's min b'she'ein minoi and treat it the same way. Zok the Gemara, Zok the more true, but tonight it's a machlokes tonight. So the kasha was, how could you say that Rish Lakish holds with a simple roy by min b'minoi? The iser will be mevatel. The hatter will be mevatel. The iser. Rabbi Yehuda argues. The Gemara answers yes. Rabbi Yehuda argues true, but the Rabbanan argue on Rabbi Yehuda that tonight Tanya dli sheyesh boy yain lovan oy chalav vit biloi halchen achar her. But Rabbi Yehuda roy noisa kilu yain edaim imdiam harei akasher v'mlachos. Okay, so let's see where we're holding now. Right now, we're holding that Rish Lakish does hold of three premises that allowed him to paskin that if a kezayis of, let's say, noiser, the kezayis of pickle are mixed together, there's no malchus. Number one, hasra shavik lav shema asra. Number two, at least by min b'minoi, it's bottled with a simple rive. And number three, I forgot what number three is, so let me go back to the last amud to get a reminder. Number three was tam ki'ikr, which we now are reversing from because we originally said there were Rish holds tam ki'ikr lav deraisa. We're reversing from that, and we're saying surely Rish Lakish holds tam ki'ikr is deraisa because we pulled back and we said that Rish Lakish only said as halakha by min b'minoi, but the halakha would not apply by min b'shein. So that's what we're holding up. Rish Lakish holds asra shavik lav shema asra, and Rish Lakish holds that now I'm really getting confused. So we look back again to Amar Aleph, to the three halachas that we learned that we only remained with two intact. Shema mina. The first, the Isurim of Atum says, all right, that was this. The other Chiddush of Rish Lakish is even though Pigel and Noitzer are both Isurim, you would think Isser is not Batal and Isser. You might think Isser is only Batal and Heter. Zok Rish Lakish Chiddush that Isser is Batal and Isser. Okay. Now we can go back to where we're up to. Break the Gemara Akash. Urimini, Dli Shahu Male Roikin. What if you had a Dli that was full of saliva? Now, the difference between saliva and milk or white wine, like we've been discussing, is that saliva is stickier and saliva doesn't get so easily displaced with water. So it's full of roik. What type of roik? The roik might be the roik of a tummy. As Rashi says, Moli Roikin. Okay, so we'll see in a minute Rashi's comments on it. So the lead that was full of saliva, Vitbiloin was toibled, ki iluloi toval, it's as if it wasn't toibled. And Rashi says, Sharoik Avu, a roik has a certain thickness, a viscosity to it. And therefore, v'choitzis b'fnei amayim, it will actually create a coating on the lead that will not let the water penetrate it. And therefore, in a bottle b'mayim, and the roik itself won't be bottled to the water. Umole lav tafka. It didn't have to be mole roikin; it had to have roikin in it. Ela'aydi the boy lemisni mole merak laim, because the next case that we're going to quote in a moment is mole merak laim. The dafka who there it had to be full. Dashmina rabusa. There, the Bryce is going to be telling us a chiddush. Like boy live tulinu, even if it's full of meraglayim, you don't need bittel because Meraglaim is considered water. The kivin avu mea mikval piv v'noshkoi loisen shabesoichai. Once the Meraglaim becomes connected to the water of the bar, the mikveh, it's enough that it's all going to be mitaher. Nasu chiburlem v'tir, the Meraglaim min maimei. Meraglaim is a type of mayim. People who use some old mikvahs who know that. Taninami mali roikin. That's why it also said mali roikin. But even if it wasn't mali roikin, even if it was just a little bit of roik, it would be a chatzitza from water. But meraglaim, what if you had a deli that was full of meraglaim? That's not a problem. Roin oisoi ki ilu hein mayim. You look at it, you look at the meraglaim as if it's water, because as Rashi just taught us, in fact, meraglaim has a status of water. And you know that if you have water in a mikveh that's possible, for instance, when we fill up our mikvahs from the tap, we're filling it up with mayim shuvah. How do we make that kosher to toivelin? We make hashaka, meaning we pull out a plug that's in the hole of the wall of the bar that allows the water, the nice, clean, fresh water that we filled up with a tap, it comes in contact with the water of the bar that was rainwater that was just next door. That makes the whole water tar through hashaka. So you don't have to mevatel anything. Merely the fact that any body of water touches a kosher for a mikveh body of water, it all becomes kosher for a mikveh. So too with the meraglaim. Meraglaim is like mayim shuvah. Once it touches the water around it, it's as if hashaka was made, and even the water in the keli would be good water. So here we're not even discussing in the shaila bittul b'roiv, not bittul b'roiv. We're actually making the meraglaim into kosher or mikveh water. So what does it say there? If the deli was full of meraglaim, roy noisoi ki ilu hein mayim, you look at it as if it's like mayim, because in fact it is mayim. What if it was mole mechatos? What if you had a deli that was full of very expensive water? It was the paraduma mixture, which is very valuable, and it's there in that keli. There the halacha is achi yirbu hamayim al mechatos. There has to be more water from the mikvah than there is from the mechatos. Rashi says, mole mechatos hoil bein avatuma. Water from the mechatos are an avatuma, because we know the person who spritzes the mechatos, he becomes tamei. He says yichabes begadas, meaning he becomes tamei, and he becomes a rishon l'tumah, and the mechatos has the status of an avatuma. And v'chashivi, the waters of the paraduma are very valuable, and therefore they won't be bottled mishum kiddush tayu, and therefore loy batlen el beruba. It won't be bottled only beroif. In other words, the ashaka won't help. Achi yerba amayim ein tefila oila lekli. The deli that had this mechatos in it will not become tar. Achi yishbaich mehem yoser mechetzev shal kli. More than 50% of the contents of the kli would have to be spilled out. So there should be at least a roiv of kosher water to be mevatel the mechatos, and then and only then will it become Torah. So now we're going to focus on one case. We're focusing on the case of the meraglaim for now, because it uses an interesting nusach in this brayso. It says roin oisa kilu ein mayim. Who is the Tana that we're familiar with that uses such a lingo? That's Rabbi Yehuda. Because isn't that what Rabbi Yehuda said? That when you have wine in this deli, royin oisai kihilu huyayin edom. If you had white wine or cholav, you look at it like it's like red wine. So this lingo, this term of royin oisai, is a Rabbi Yehuda phrase. So pashtus, this brisa here is also going according to Rabbi Yehuda. Yet it says that it's bottle with a mere roiv. So zok to Gemara, man shamas lady isle roin. Who is the Tana that uses in his vernacular, he uses this roin? It's Rabbi Yehuda. V'katani desagi leberuba. Nevertheless, what does this brayso of deli say? It says you're fine with roiv. When it comes to being mevatel the mechatos, you're fine with a simple roiv. Why don't you look at the mechatos like it's red? So I you have a steer gufa in Rabbi Yehuda. What is Rabbi Yehuda? Zok to Gemara, Amar Abaye Eloi Kash. It's not schwer. You know why? Turning on to Ayin Tesam and Aleph. Hadi Day, Hadi Rabbi. Rabbi Yehuda quoted one thing in his own name, and he quoted the other brisa in the name of his Rebbe. And Rashi tells us which one was his Rebbe and which one is his own halacha. Zok Rashi Hadi Rabbi. Hadit Nan Il. That what we learned earlier in the case of the chalav or white wine that was in the dli, and it said there, Rabbi Yehuda said over there, Royin Oisai Kihilu U Yayin Edaim the Rabbehu. That is the shita of Rabbi Yehuda's Rebbe. The Machmer Bebittel Kihechi the Machmer Bemin Beminoi. He's Machmer by Bittel. The Omar Loi Botil Kalal. He holds that it's not bottle. That min b'minei won't be bottle at all. Umin b'she'ene minei nami, there is like the bottle, and min b'she'ene mina that he holds is bottle. The kaimalei kozman shemar amuat nikar b'roi v'loi bottle machmer nami. Even by min b'she'ene mina, which will be bottle, but it's only bottle. The heicha the marein shaven kigo in yain lavan b'mayim the roi nois kilo edain v'lei sagi lebu. Min b'minoi, he's very machmer, the Rabban, and they don't have bottle at all. Min b'sheni minoi, which could be bottle, that's only going to be bottle if there's no mara left. And if you have something that has the same mara, you have to look at it as if it's a different color, and that color has to be overwhelmed and this bottle in order for it to be bottle. But Rabbi Yehuda himself holds that a mere roiv would be mevatel by min b'she'enei minoi, and now that allows even Rish Lakish to go according to Rav Yehuda. Now there's a lot of problems that are raised in this Gemara. I'm just going to raise some of them, and just to bring them to your attention. So I'm going to go back to Ayin Chesam and Beis. Now we have this term royin, and we've used it in two radically different ways. When Rabbi Yehuda was talking about milk or white wine that was in a dli, Rabbi Yehuda says they're royin oisai keilu huyayin edai. You look at it like it's red wine, meaning you make an assessment and you assess it. If this was red wine, what impact would the water have had on it? Would it have still been visible or not? So that's what royin means in the first brayso of Rabbi Yehuda. It's a part of a calculation as to whether or not the min was bottled in the she'enai minai. However, the royin that we're talking about, when we're talking about meiraglaim, it's in a dli. That meiraglaim, we're never looking to be mavatal it. We're just looking to make hashaka. And there, the lashon is also royin oisai keilu hein mayim. We look at it as if it's full of water. And Rashi explains not because it's bottle. Rashi explains because it is water, and we just need a shaka to kasher the puzzle of water of the meiraglaim so that it should be able to be something that you could be toivel. So oibazoi, what was the Gemara's whole kasha? Man Tana, man shamas like this like Royin Rabbi Yehuda. The Royin of Rabbi Yehuda is a completely different Royin that we've quoted in this brisa. The Royin of Rabbi Yehuda was a calculation as to whether or not, had it been a different color, would it be noticeable. That has nothing to do with the Royin of the Meiraglaim in the brisa. So what is the kasha? So that is one of the big kashas on this sugya. It's one of Tosfos' kashas that he raises in the long Tosfos. And I just want to raise one more kasha that Tosfos raises that makes Tosfos lead to all different shots, just that we should be aware of it. And that is earlier on the Omid, when we discussed a kazayis of pigel mixing with a kazayis of noisar. And Rashi has told us that the reason why, according to Rish Lakish, you don't get malchus is because of asra safek. Why? Because it's possible that we have a kazais of pickle, but not of noiser. Because some of the kazais of noiser might be mixed into the pickle, or vice versa. And therefore, when I'm warning you, don't eat pickle, I don't know if you're going to be chayiv. When I'm warning you if you're going to eat noiser, I don't know if you're going to be chayiv because I don't know if there's a kazais left. Frank says that's not what hasra safek is. In every hasra, it's a safek. Am I going to do that there or not? So he asked, according to Rashi, if I warn him, if you eat this, you're going to get malchus for pickle, and you're going to get malchus for noiser. That's not hasra safek. I know that one of these things has a kazayis, so that should not be considered a hasra safek. That was Tosfos' kasha. Because of that, what Tosfos learns is that the case was where you had the kazayis of pickle and the kazayis of noiser. But there's some pickle mixed into the noiser, and there's some noiser mixed into the pickle. So I don't know which one of these is considered the kazais of pickle, and I don't know which one of these has a rive of noiser, is considered the kazais of noiser. And he didn't eat them together. He ate them one at a time. So when he ate one kazais, and this kazais itself, we don't know, is it noiser or is it pickle? He gave him hasra, but he didn't know what it was. Therefore, it's hasra safek. When he ate the second one, it's the same hasra safek. So therefore, according to Tosfos, it's a hasra safek. So Tosfos and Rashi have a little bit of mashar. Rashi learns that you're eating both kezesim simultaneously, and it's still considered a hasra safek. And Tosfos held that wouldn't be considered a hasra safek, but each of these kezesim were eaten one after the other in two separate actions with two separate hasras, of which each one would have been a hasra safek. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we were zeichen to finish that Ayin Zayin, and Baruch Hashem, tomorrow we will learn the Ayin Ches.
Ayin Tes.
Shkoyach.
Shkoyach.
Shkoyach. Did it stop snowing yet in